Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Read T-Boss, where I take old stories I've narrated and updated into modern audio standards. This particular story is called Haunted, written by Talisane. War Captain Zaria of the Kamari Protectorate frowned as the light strips of the side of the corridor flickered. She moved him close, lightly tapping on the clear plasteel panels as the lights flickered and fluttered, before snapping back into the steady glow that they had always displayed. She watched them carefully, the thick ridges of her brow drawing together into a glare as she dared them to flicker again. As if in response to her gaze, just despite her, the light strips went out entirely, and not just in the corridor that she was standing in, but all up and down the hall, as if someone had flicked the switch. Zaria growled in frustration, a low harmonic sound, as she dug through her pockets of her dress uniform, pulling out a datapad and activating the flashlight on the device. The corridor lit up enough for her to see in front of her, and she leaned back towards the wall, dabbing at the lights again. The lights going out should have been impossible. All warships in the Protectorate had been outfitted with the latest in chemical luminescent technology more than 10 standards ago, and there hadn't been a single problem with them that whole time until recently. They were chemical lights, not powered by the ship's systems, and should have been rated to stay glowing for at least another 10 standards. At the absolute minimum. The lights flickered. Zaria looked down at her datapad in astonishment, bringing the device up to her face, bearing her bangs at the device as she eyed the device warily with her 4 glowing eyes. The light from her datapad went out. Frustration overwhelmed her. She tilted her head back and howled. "I am aware that we have a problem, Tech Sergeant Shim," she hissed, barely constrained rage bubbling beneath her words like acid. "What I'm here interested in is what you intend to do to fix the problem." "I understand your frustration, War Captain," the skinny technician from the mechanics cast said, cringing from the heat of her rage. "But it's not that Your job is to make it simple, mechanic," Zaria said. "You will tell me immediately why we are experiencing these problems, or I'll find another use for your scrawny meat and your endoskeleton, and to shield your innards." The technician's flesh, soft and tender, and on the outside of his chitinous plating, where it didn't belong, turned a pale grey. The war captain stood almost half his height above him, looming over him, with her scything battle arms hanging over him, as she stood braced against the deck with her 6 supporting legs. Zaria was of the war caste, and an abnormally large product of that caste at that. Her chitinous plating was thick and gleamed in the light of the bridge with a healthy green luster. "My brother technicians have drawn up a potential causation, War Captain," Shim said, struggling to keep his antennae from trembling and broadcasting his fear. He'd heard stories of Zaria before he'd been assigned to the ship. Her ship, the flagship of the Spiral Arm Attack Armada, was a legend, scoring the most enemy kills and having been a participant in every major invasion the Protectorate had conducted. It was well known that the flagship had been instrumental in the battle to crush the sentient race that had occupied this quadrant of the galaxy. Humans, they called themselves, an ugly, weak name for an ugly, weak race. Shim had heard stories of the lengths War Captain Zaria was supposed to have gone to ensure proper maniacal discipline within the flagship, but figured that they had been just that, stories. It had been forced to change his mind his first day at the ship, when he'd reported to the bridge and seen the headless corpse of the previous tech sergeant he was replacing being dragged out by a pair of warrior caste. His predecessor had been tasked with getting the repairs to the flagship handled on time. He hadn't finished them in time. Shim had come on and made the damn sure that his team knew what was at stake. "What is your theory, Tech Sergeant?" Zaria demanded, baring her fangs. "Troubles with our systems throughout the fleet," Shim began, suppressing a shudder, "began once we conquered and enslaved the humans in this region of space." "The humans?" Zaria scoffed, rearing back to her full height. "They're nothing. Just a minor ripple in our wave of conquest. It is not the causation we have determined, War Captain," Shim said. "Simply a correlation. For thousands of standards, the fleet of the Protectorate has been a pinnacle of military science in our region of space. There has been nothing to match it. The mechanic caste has been gene-engineered and bred to keep the fleet running as smoothly as the larval eggs of our queen's mother. But ever since we fought and conquered the humans, there has been a technical problems without cease amongst the fleet. And worse," Shim trailed off. "Worse?" Zaria asked. "I have been speaking with my fellow engineers," Shim said, "and there are a few troubling points to consider. Go on, Tech Sergeant, Zaria growled impatiently. These problems are more widespread than you might suspect, War Captain, he said. Every ship in the fleet has been suffering from them. Once more, every planet, every single colony where humans have been used as slaves for the glory of the Protectorate has been reporting similar mechanical dysfunctions. The lights on the bridge systems and consoles flickered. The rest of the bridge crew, who had been studiously minding their own business and doing their very best to be obvious to not be listening in on the war captain's conversation, glanced up at the lights with trepidation. And 2 further points, Shim said, nervous now, without meaning to. He tucked his head in as close to his chest as possible, trying to make it harder for the war captain to snap off his head off with one bite, as she had done with his predecessor. Yes, Tech Sergeant. The problems have been getting more and more frequent, and more severe as well. Zaria stared down at him for a moment, her poor eyes narrowed and considering. War, Captain, a voice hissed through Zaria's comm patch to her chest. Zaria reached down and activated it to tap her claw. War, Captain, the voice interrupted again. The hissing was broken up by wheezing gasps, as if the speaker had run a long way. Warrior Tenram has been killed. But, Zaria blazed with anger, how? He was walking through the hangar bay, performing inspections, when one of our forward attack craft retracted its landing struts and tilted. It crushed him from the legs down, War Captain. Who is responsible? She growled. I'll have the offending party and their offspring to the 4th generation moved down 3 castes for this accident. That's the thing, War Captain, the panicked voice said. There was no one else in the area at the time. There was no one on the attack craft. The struts just retracted it all on its own. Zaria was quiet. Your will, War Captain, Chip said. What shall we do? Are there any humans left in the Protectorate? Zaria asked. Her voice sounded calm and quiet, which was oddly a lot scarier than when she was growling. I'm sure there might be a small handful here or there, War Captain, Shim said nervously. But it has been just over 100 standards since their planet was discovered and conquered. Their species had been spread throughout the fleets, planets and colonies as slaves, but, well, yes, from what my brothers have shared with us, Shim said nervously, the upper caste found the human slaves to be quite, tasty. As their numbers shrunk, they grew to be considered a bit of a delicacy. As such, I don't think there will be many of them left in the Protectorate. Send a message pod to the Hive, Zaria said, marking her command at a comms officer. Tell the Queen Mother that I require a human slave to question immediately about the mechanical failures that we've been experiencing. Have them transported to the flagship at once. We shall rendezvous with them wherever is convenient. Surely there must at least be one human left in the Protectorate we can interrogate. Perhaps then we'll finally get to the bottom of this troubling matter. All told, it took almost a quarter of a standard before a suitable human slave was located and sent off by courier ship to rendezvous with Zaria's ship. In that time, she suffered 20 more casualties amongst her crew. One and all were victims of some sort of unexplainable technological phenomena. Airlocks would open randomly, power lines would unexpectedly rupture, and one particularly unfortunate engineer was sucked through his waste disposal unit when the vacuum system attached to it activated at 5 times its maximum strength. It wasn't just the flagship, either. Similar stories were being called in uncollated throughout the Protectorate, all throughout the fleets and colonies, as well as the inhabited worlds. From urgent classified missives Zaria had received, it was clear that these incidents had reached as far as the Hive, the Kumari home planet where Queen Mother resided. Zaria knew there was a lot on the line by the time the human was brought up to where she resided on the bridge, and she was determined to find answers. She was the war captain, strong scything claws of the Protectorate, and she had never before failed. She didn't intend to start now. Well, human, she scowled, you have heard of our problem. Provide us with an answer, and we shall see to it that you live the rest of your short life in relative comfort. Fail, and you will be sold to the upper class. We have some prospective buyers in mind already, and I hear they have a new recipe they are dying to try. Zaria's hissing voice bed into the translator matrix and came out in a series of sharply ended sounds that the human presumably understood. Well, the human nodded thoughtfully. He had been a slave to one of the upper council members of the Hive, and thus treated relatively well and was in good condition. The Queen Mother had appropriated him and sent him along at Zaria's request. The war captain was a darling of the military, and even the Queen Mother had thought better than to antagonize her scything claw without good reason. The way I see it, sounds like you're all haunted or something. Haunted? Zaria rolled the unfamiliar word around her mandibles. Yeah, you know, by ghosts or poltergeists or what have you. Zaria's four eyes narrowed as she looked down at the little fleshy creature. The translator did its best, but the words the human used didn't quite have an analog in the Komori tongue. The closest translation came out as Veil Hunter, but didn't quite feel right. Explain, she demanded. You guys don't have ghosts, the human asked, surprise evident on its fleshy face. You know, like when you kill someone, but they are filled with an overwhelming rage, or they have things that they want to get set right. Even after they're dead, they sort of hang around. They haunt places, go after those that did them wrong. You speak nonsense, Zaria said, struggling to rein in her famous temper. The physical material realm is all that exists. It is why the Komari fight so much harder and better than our enemies. It is why we are able to conquer your entire planet, human, enslave your entire species within a single standard. The Queen Mother gives birth to us all, and the body is all that exists with which we make her proud. Guess you bugs aren't all that big on religion, the human said. Even if what you said is true, Zaria said, baring her fangs, how do we stop these ghosts from haunting our ships, our worlds? You say you bugs have taken humans everywhere, killed humans everywhere, every ship, every colony, every planet. Yours was a fruitful race, Zaria admitted. Not so useful when it came to manual labor, but very delightful as an after-dinner treat. Well, if you bugs don't believe in God or even have a religion, I mean, if you refuse to believe that there is anything that can linger after a physical body dies, I'm assuming you don't have priests or exorcisms. Zaria looked at him blankly. The translator couldn't quite make sense of the words the human had used. There was simply no analog to the Komori language. Then I guess you're all heading up Shit Creek, Zaria glowered, looming over the human. What does a river of excrement have to do with any of this? It's a figure of speech, the human said, a hard cheerfulness beneath his words. It means you're fucked. There was a loud, ominous hum from the filtration units embedded in the walls, and abruptly, the soft, incessant white noise of the air filtration systems died away, leaving a truly eerie silence in its wake. Utter silence in spaceships, which usually meant trouble. Wall Captain, one of the techs shouted, turning to Zaria. Our life support systems, they all just shorted out. What about the backups? She asked. Shorted out, another tech reported, turning to face the War Captain. And the backups to the backups? She asked. Shorted out as well, the first tech responded, stunned surprise evident in his voice. We're trying to bring them back up now, but something like this isn't supposed to happen, ever. It's impossible. Zaria's eyes snapped to the light strips that they flickered and slowly started fading out. She felt the first tug of an unfamiliar emotion. Fear at the tip of her stomach at the thought of an entire population of unseen, silent entities walking through the corridors of every ship, of every colony, on every world, stalking the Komori like prey. As the darkness closed in on the bridge, heavy and oppressive, the last thing Zaria heard was the human laughing. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.